What is up, people? Welcome back to Blueprint Japan. And first things first, I do need to apologize. I really owe you an apology because I was not able to upload an episode last month in March. I went to Busan and then I went to Daegu for a wedding. And then from Daegu back to Busan to Bangkok. I had a conference that I was invited to about AI and real estate, which was amazing. Maybe I might have an episode on that in the future, but it made me realize how much I was lacking behind in terms of AI in general, seeing what all those individuals were building. And yeah, then Bangkok, Fukuoka, and then from Fukuoka, came back to Tokyo. Completely fried. I am so exhausted, but like in a good way. And so quick update on that note. And then I had friends visiting. That was pretty awesome. Haven't seen them in, I think, over a year, 1.5 maybe. Yeah, so thanks for swinging by. And yeah, so it's been a month. It's been a couple of weeks. But yeah, all that to say, Kumori or whatever I am building is growing. And today's episode has also to do with that. But before we get into today's episode, a quick word from the first, drum roll, please. First official sponsor of Blueprint Japan, realestate.jp. Now, if you're thinking about buying or investing in a home in Tokyo, realestate.jp is hands down one of the better places to start. And the person behind it is Emil Gorgis, who I have a lot of respect for. Emil has spent years and years working with foreign clients on Japan real estate, and that experience shows in how he guides individuals and families. He takes his time to consult them and to help them find the right home and get the right financing. Emil is a certified home loan advisor. And so if a home in Japan is part of your long-term picture, whether you are already living here, you're thinking about investing, or you're just starting to figure out whether it makes sense for you, realestate.jp is definitely worth a look. Big thanks to Emil and his team for supporting the show. The links will be in the show notes to both his website and his LinkedIn. And yeah, so without further ado, let's dive right into it. Now, this episode, I said, will have something to do with Kumori and the company's growth. Now, almost exactly, people, 1 year ago, May 19th, 2025, I got a DM on LinkedIn. And I get heaps of DMs all about like visa stuff and, COEs and like company establishment and whatnot. And so there was this young person around my age, a little bit younger. So he had reached out, and I'm reading this off of my screen now, his DM. I have LinkedIn open. He said, "Hey, Osan, thanks for connecting. I create interview videos for foreigners who want to work and live in Japan. One of the upcoming episodes focuses on expats who have started their own business or are working as freelancers here. As the founder of Kumori, I'd love to invite you for a conversation about your journey as an entrepreneur in Japan." Well, can, discuss about that. But would you be open to sharing your experiences on camera? I believe your story could really inspire others who are considering a similar path. Let me know if you'd be interested in. I'd love to hear from you. Cheers. Now, long story short, we hopped on a call. We had the interview. It is on YouTube somewhere. And then we just kept the conversation going, the relationship going. And I was like, man, I really need someone who can produce content like this person and who can basically help me with Kumori, but also, and even more so, with my own personal channel, with the podcast. And So we started, collaborating on ideas. We had a pretty good workflow together, and he always checked in and made sure, that I was like on track. And I was like, you know what, man? Like, let's see how this works out. And if it works out well and well enough, I promise you, I'll bring you over with a visa. Because again, my initial plan was to get the KA Economy visa, the business manager visa, and then hire people, then grow a team, creative team, and do the PR, press release company, media company. And I think that's still the goal, but it will take longer for sure. And so, yeah, I was like, hey, I promise you, right? And so I made a promise, and I am a person who holds his promises. And so, yeah, in January, I filed for his COE, his Certificate of Eligibility, and we got it, I think, first week of March. Last week of February. No, it wasn't February because I wasn't here in March. February received his Certificate of Eligibility. Um, and so that's the episode will be about how we did that, what the documents looked like. So, what I had to submit, what was required from the company side, from the applicant side. And there were two more documents, or one more, no, two more documents, I think, that I had to submit, which I will explain later on. But yeah, so that's the episode about. I hope it will be helpful to all of you, employers and future employees, people who are just overall interested in getting a regular work visa. And yeah, by the way, I will have lots of content about the recent changes and movements on the immigration side, and things are going crazy right now. But yeah, um, okay, how do I start this? I start this with, and I'm thinking out loud because I don't usually script my solo episodes. Okay, so I think, so I have all the documents in front of me, and I'll just go through them one by one. And so, say the first segment will be about the COE. Okay, now this has to be clarified because it sounds very basic and it sounds very like, oh yeah, but like we know this. Yes, but the COE, the Certificate of Eligibility, is not a visa. Okay, the COE and the visa are basically two separate things, two separate documents issued by two separate bodies. So, and even in two separate countries, now that I think of it, and they have to happen in sequence, usually. Okay, so the COE is issued by the MOJ, so Japan's Ministry of Justice, and it's the Immigration Bureau. So when you go to Shinagawa or anywhere else, that's the body that basically issues that document. And what that document is, in pretty easy terms, is it says, okay, so we have reviewed your application, and based on what we have seen, you are, or this person, you appear to meet the conditions for the residence status that you're applying for. And so it's basically a green light from Japan's immigration side. And so then the visa gets issued by the Japanese embassy in your or the applicant's home country. It's basically the document that actually, lets you enter Japan. So the sequence would be the employer in Japan files the COE application. Immigration has to review it, and typically, okay, anywhere from 4 weeks to 12 weeks. Though it can move faster or even longer nowadays. I went through Reddit, and it does not look too well over there. So, and if approved, they issue the COE and mail it to the designated address in Japan. The company forwards the COE to the employee overseas, and then the employee takes the COE to the Japanese embassy in their home country and applies for the visa. The visa gets issued, and then the person enters Japan. It sounds very simple. It actually is very simple. And you can hear how I'm like fried, man. My voice is cracking up. So this is very important to understand because it shapes the whole timeline. The it's basically the COE is like the halfway point, right? And what's important to understand is it's not just like a compliance accuracy or exercise or matter. Yes, you have to fill out the forms correctly and make sure that nothing is missing, and you have to submit and then wait and all of that. But the better question, the more important question to ask is, okay, does the story that we have been given make sense? So immigration is basically looking, okay, is this a real person with a real background being brought in for a real role that exists by a real company for work that genuinely fits the residence status that they are applying for? That's basically the whole thing. Like, yes, everything else matters. Obviously, you have to file the documents the right way, but if the whole story in itself, in its entirety, if that's a word, makes sense or not, right? And so for this person's visa, for this person's certificate of eligibility, I chose the 기주츠 진분 지식이 국사의 교무 visa, which is the Gijinkoku, or the Engineer Specialist in Humanities and International Services visa. So that visa category is basically one of the most applied for visa categories right now. Again, things are changing. There are heaps of visa categories out there. But to acquire this type of visa, the Gijinkoku visa, the applicant has to get a job offer from a Japanese company or institution, very important, in an approved category. So it has to be a job that is understandable and that is clear and that like exists, right? So again, lots of majority of jobs fall automatically into that category anyways. So you have all your marketing specialists and mechanical engineers. I just met one this weekend. Programmers, language teachers, international sales representatives, you name it. And the applicant has to hold at least a bachelor's degree or 10 years of relevant work experience. So either or. This is a very interesting one. So when I did my research, I found that the salary had to be comparable to what a Japanese person would get in the same under the same duties, basically. And so they have to have an employment contract that shows a stable full-time conditions. Now, this is very important, and we will get more in-depth into this. It does not say they have to be a full-time employee. It says full-time conditions, right? More to that later on, but small teaser. And the role has to align with the job category that they applied for. So, for example, if you have, I don't know, a mechanical engineer, you cannot work as an English teacher. Okay. And then you have your job, location and your responsibilities and whatnot. So those are the requirements to get that visa. So I submitted 9 documents in total, and I'll just briefly go through each one of them, explain them, and I will try to link either templates or the original MOJ documents somewhere in the show notes or on LinkedIn. And you can always ask me as well. So the first document that we submitted was, apologies, the Certificate of Eligibility application form. So the COE application form is the official MOJ form, and it's the base document that the entire application is built around. It is a multi-page. I think we submitted 4 pages. You can delete a couple of pages from the original document. 4 pages government form that covers the applicant's personal details, nationality, passport information, date of birth, place of birth. It's very detailed. Current address, Japanese contact address, which residence status that they're applying for, so which visa category, the intended length of stay, and then where they will be applying for the visa abroad. And so in our case, I said, okay, we're going to go for the Gijinkoku visa. I shot for the 5-year visa for a 5-year duration. Spoiler alert, they only gave 1 year, which kind of makes sense. And then the visa to be applied for. And then I said it's the Japanese embassy in the Netherlands. And that's section 1. Section 2 will be filled out by the employer. So it will cover all the company's details, the nature of the contract, the salary, the applicant's job title, and their intended activities in Japan. And this is basically where immigration gets the factual skeleton of the case. Now, on its own, it does not argue anything. It doesn't explain things. It doesn't say why X, Y, Z makes sense. That's everything else for that you have to include in your application. So the second document was the education history and degree certificate. So you have the 最終学歴証明書 and the 卒業証明書. And for the Gijinkoku visa, one of the core eligibility requirements, again, as mentioned before, is that the applicant has a university degree or equivalent professional experience. And that's basically relevant to the work that they will be doing in Japan. So you have to have either or. So we submitted 2 things here. We have 1 education history record, and then the actual degree certificate. So the degree certificate that I submitted was a bachelor's in communication and multimedia design from NHL Stenden University that was issued back in January 2025. Now, I think relevance matters here a lot. Immigration, yes, they care that obviously there is a degree, but they're also checking whether it connects to the role. Okay, so communication and multimedia design for a role that involves English language, media production, video content, podcast production, like Blueprint Japan style, international facing communication, all that is a direct match. And there's basically no confusion around the topic. Okay, so that is okay. You don't want anything else. You don't want to be like, well, the person has a degree in communication multimedia design, but they will also be working on putting car parts together. That does not make sense. So that's what you want. And every single time, and I keep this as a rule of thumb, every single time immigration has to do interpretive work, guesswork, and they have to, it's like unclear and they have to call you, every single time they have to infer a connection rather than just like, okay, we see clearly, you are introducing uncertainty into the file. And that's usually also why things have to get, well are being gotten delayed. I can't, oh my gosh, conjugate anymore. You know what I mean? So the cleaner the match, the cleaner the case. And the third document that I have here was a professional background statement. So this is one of the most important documents in the file. And it's not a CV. A CV is also needed, but a CV is a list. Okay. This document explains the CV. It's kind of like the narrative to the CV. Its job is to connect the dots between education, professional experience, specific skills, and the role that the person will take on in Japan. It's basically, you can ask yourself this question: has this person actually been working in this field that they are coming from? Because having a degree will most of the time not be enough. Immigration wants to see that the person has applied those skills in real professional settings. So they've had clients, deliverables, projects. And so that professional background statement, it's called Shokumu Keirekisho, is basically saying that, okay, what you have learned in university, you have applied, and this is the reasoning, this is the explanation. So it says basically you have been doing all those things that are in your university degree or CV. And so in our case, ours covered his full professional trajectory, starting from his time at university, where the curriculum was heavily project based, which was really good, actually. So he was working with companies already while studying. So it wasn't just like classroom and theory. It was like, okay, he had briefs and projects. And so, and then we included his work at a Dutch production company handling social media, video content for major brands. And then, which also was interesting, his freelance work as an independent video producer for B2B clients. And so he had his own website and YouTube with millions of views. And yeah, so that was the YouTube and content channel specifically produced on helping foreigners navigate life in Japan. I might as well just link his content, his Kojinji Gyonishi, also somewhere either on LinkedIn or in the comment section description, which his website, importantly, is directly relevant to the kind of work that he'll be doing for Komori and Komori clients. And so I think, the key about this document is the thread. So you basically have from studying to practice to specializing in one thing, which in his case, again, was like videography and social media. So the narrative has to hold together. This is what immigration is reading into, and they look for that continuity. And yeah, it's simple. If that thread breaks, if there's a gap, it's going to be really hard to explain and likely leading to a rejection of the visa application. So document number 4 is the explanation letter to immigration. It's called Ryusho. And if I had to pick one document in this entire file and say, this is where the case is made or not made, it's probably this one, in my opinion. Okay. And again, I should have said this in the beginning, disclaimer. I am not a gyosei shoshi. I am not a scrivener. I'm not a lawyer. Please, people, consult with lawyers. I'm just super curious about how the system works. And I've been doing this for 3 years, going on 4 now, successfully. I know the documents. I know immigration officers. And this is just based on my experience, okay? Again, there will be episodes on student visas that I have changed into working visas, and then business manager cases, JFind, HSP, and so on. But again, don't quote me on these things. This is just based on my personal experience. I still do recommend you go to a lawyer or a gyosei shoshi, consult with them, talk with them. That's what their job is. That's why what they are here for. And maybe eventually, if I can make it, the goal is to get my own license in the future. But yeah, so document number 4, the explanation letter is addressed directly to the Immigration Bureau. And so I included this letter saying it's basically a formal way from the company side, signed by the representative and stamped, that basically takes everything in the file and explains it. And it doesn't explain only what the case is, but why it makes sense rather. So it's an argumentative document. It's a reasoning document, if you want. And think about it this way. It's this is why you should approve this, please, document. So ours was structured in 6 sections over 3 pages. Section 1 introduced the applicant's role and background, stated the visa category being applied for. And then section 2 explained the company's business in detail, what it like. So there's a document called Zenbu Shomesho, and that explains what the company was registered with. So all the business activities. And so the applicant, the role and the duties have to match the business details, right? And so section 3 laid out the specific duties that the applicant would be taking on. And so all these 3 sections have to align. Okay, again, number 1 is the applicant and the visa category. Number 2 is the business and business details. Number 3 is what does the applicant do in the company. And now looking at the document, we did have a section 4. I thought it was 3. It's his academic background and why it is directly relevant to those duties. Now, if you want, you can add 2 more sections to make everything even more clear. So you can add in this case, a 5th section where you are explaining why this role qualifies as the Gijinkoku international services category. And there's like a list, official list of that. You can also find that online. And the second section that you can add on is the conclusion, the summarizing why the whole package meets the requirements for this visa category And then in the end, you can say, we would appreciate if you would rate this application positively. And I mentioned, I think this is one of the key documents, if not the key document. And I believe it is so because in the application, there is no other place in the entire file where you can make an explicit argument about this. Every other document, think about it as an evidence, right? So this one is the case. And so the problem is if you do write it vaguely, if you just describe the company in like very broad terms and, say the role is relevant without explaining how exactly, you are leaving immigration to draw their own conclusions, which again is, you don't want that. And yeah, so if you're filing a COE without a lawyer and you're going to invest serious time in any single document, I think I would say invest it here, because again, the other ones are just things you have to submit. This one you have to explain things and argue and write even multiple drafts, right? But yeah, anyways. So that's the fourth document. Now the fifth document is the shokumu keiken ni tsuite. It's the statement on work experience, and it is written from the company side. It's basically similar to document number 3, but document number 3 is written from the applicant's perspective. This one is written by the company. It's signed by the daihyosha, the representative, and it is specifically making the argument that the applicant's work history qualifies as continuous, practical, professional experience that is needed for this visa category. And so the employer is basically vouching for the applicant's background and professional, track record. So it's, especially in this case, and it will make more sense in the next section, but because the applicant's experience includes a mix of employment, part-time while studying, freelance work, self projects, it can create confusion, right? Because immigration sometimes would see this differently. And so this document, this letter, it can be half a page, can be 1 page, can be even more, makes the argument that all of it taken together just paint the full picture, and that is professional experience in a relevant field for the company. So it basically highlights their work on past projects that are same or very similar to what the company is doing. So, in our case, again, podcast production, video production, focused on helping foreigners understand Japan and Japanese procedures and whatnot, maybe YouTube content and so on. So it argues that this is not just production work that anyone can do, but it's information design, it's audience analysis, and it's specialized communication. And that one requires expertise, because technical skill you can find anywhere, especially in Japan. Like videographers, photographers in Japan, creatives in Japan are amazing. I'm talking about Japanese people. But this one needed to understand also the foreign mindset and had to be able to communicate that content visually and informatively toward an international audience. So this is number 5. Number 6 is the Zaiseki Shoumesho. It's a certificate of affiliation. Now, usually, again, based on my experience, I'm just trying to give you as much information as possible. If you have a full-time employee, you can omit this document. But this document is an official form which gets issued by the company, stamped and signed, and it confirms that the applicant is affiliated with your company, with your entity. And it states the start date of the engagement, the employment type, and it describes the nature of the work. And in our case, now this is where it kind of gets interesting. The employment type was listed as 業務委託契約書, 契約. So it's an outsourcing agreement. It's not a full-time direct employment contract. And that is legally speaking significant because the Gijinkoku visa covers both employed workers and people working under a service contract. The difference is like in pension payments and health insurance and whatnot, but it's legally totally fine and accepted, but immigration needs to understand exactly what kind of arrangement is in place. And so this document makes that very clear. Okay. It states explicitly that the arrangement is external outsourcing. It is not employment. And that removes any kind of like friction about the legal structure of the relationship between applicant and company. And the other thing that this document does is confirm the activities that the applicant will be engaged in. So video production again, and all of that. Now, you will see lots of overlapping things in one application, but that is normal and that is needed. And it needs to be consistent with what it's, what you have, what's described in almost every single page that you're submitting. And again, any inconsistency between documents is just a question mark. They all have to say the same thing. Now, document number 7 is almost the same thing, but different. It's the 業務委託契約書. This is the official outsourcing agreement. It's the service agreement. This is the contract. Okay. And this one is legally binding. The one before is basically explaining the relationship between the company and applicant, and this one is the contract. And so I put together a 9-article agreement covering purpose, scope of the contract, specific work, contract period, compensation, payment method. Like I even said, okay, once the applicant is in Japan, it will take him 1 to 2 weeks for the bank account, but then the first payment will be the before the last day of the ongoing month, and it will be on the bank transfer. And I even included if bank transfer is not possible, payment will be made in cash. And we have the independent contractor status of the applicant, conditions for starting work locations, and what else? Confidentiality obligations, and then, as per usual, the governing law. Now, a couple of things here are important. The scope of work is important. It listed exactly what he will be doing. Exactly, specifically, everything, every single thing, word to word. And yeah, I made sure that everything is just crystal clear. And yeah, compensation down. And then I had one line in the contract that I think is worth calling out specifically. It's number 6. There, I said work begins upon the applicant obtaining proper residence status and completing initial entry into Japan, because obviously I set the dates 1 month prior to him arriving, but then I included this line because I didn't want to create any confusion as to, okay, so if the applicant is still in his home country, is he starting work without getting paid, basically? So I wanted to avoid that. I wanted to make clear so when he arrives in Japan, when he has his account and all that, that's when he starts working. So we had that going, and I'm looking. Yeah, I think that was it. And so we are almost done, people. So document number 8. So that is called the Rireki Jiko Zenbu Shoumesho. It's the company registry certificate. And this is basically the official document from the Legal Affairs Bureau, the Homukyaku, proving that the company legally exists in Japan and has all the papers and everything is fine. It's basically, think about a birth certificate, but for your company. And you can get that from any Homukyaku pretty easily. And it costs I think the last one I got was in November, and that cost me 300 yen. 300 or 400, but not more. But don't quote me on that. So, yeah. And that is important because on that one, you see all the changes that the company has been through, and also you see what the company is legally allowed to operate as and in which fields to operate in. And so that's what immigration also needs to just double check, cross check, that everything that the application says makes sense with the corporate side. And so this document really is non-negotiable. Okay. Immigration almost they cannot process the application without confirming that the receiving organization is a proper legal entity and that everything works. By the way, having said that, you can sponsor visas as a self-employed person with a kojinjigyo nushi, so sole proprietorship. That requires different documentations, but legally speaking, it is, parenthesis, still allowed. Might change in the very near future. Now, document number 9. In the beginning, I said also that we will include logistics documents. So this is the mailing instruction letter. It's the, Yuso Saki Shiteisho. Yeah. Yuso Saki Shiteisho. And it's the simplest document in the file, but it solves a very practical problem that trips everyone up. So when the COE is approved, immigration has to send the physical document somewhere. Keep that in mind. From May 2023, you can apply for the COE also online, and then they will send the COE to the applicant's mail. Now I tried that, but apparently there's a different form for that, because what I did is I had last year in December, I had downloaded the COE application form and submitted all the documents, but then they called and said, please cancel, not cancel, withdraw your application, because the form to submit the application online is different than the one that you submit at the counter. And so I had to withdraw that, but it is possible and it works for some people. And so, yeah, immigration has to send the physical document somewhere, but the applicant is back home. It was exactly the same when I got my J-Find visa 2.5 years ago. I prepared this exact same letter and said, please mail the COE to my friend, who back then was living in Nakano. And then he took it with him to Switzerland, right? So in this case, the COE came by mail and then we shipped it to the Netherlands, because he had no Japanese address and he wasn't living here. So yeah, it's basically one paragraph saying, name and address of the company, and then one statement of the request signed by the Daihyosha, and that's it. It says, please send the COE to our company address, and we will forward that document to the applicant. Yeah, that was basically it. And I think when you zoom out and look at all 9 documents together, what you see is kind of like a full picture. It's a structure. Everything makes sense, and it's not just like a bunch of like checklists and a pile of paperwork, right? Everything makes sense. Yeah. So after the COE, it's pretty straightforward. You take the COE, you go to your home country's, the Japanese embassy in your home country, and then you also submit your passport. Well, you leave your passport there, and then you submit the COE, and usually it should take like 5 days maximum. And then you get it back, and then you have to enter within 3 months. Now, that's the validity period of the COE. If you miss that period, there's like absolutely no chance you can like extend it or anything. That one is a no-go. You have to, if you miss it, you have to reapply for a new COE basically. So yeah, but again, check your home country's Japanese embassy's website, because might be that your embassy has slightly different requirements than other ones. For me, in Switzerland, and for this person in the Netherlands, it was the same. But again, just check it. Don't assume. Don't believe me. Don't quote me. Just do your own research, please, and see what you have to bring with you once you get the COE. And yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, thank you so much for listening, people. I recorded this episode because it was, again, business is growing, and I know how also for you guys, for people who want to live here, and for companies maybe who want to employ people from overseas, except business managers, because they just changed the requirements. I know and understand how kind of like opaque the whole process might feel. And it's yeah, I really hope this helps somehow. I hope this was useful. And so if you're in the middle of the process right now, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you've listened until now, thank you so, so much. And one last thing, there will be a Blueprint Japan website soon. But before I go live with that, send me your questions, your topics that you have on your mind on LinkedIn. You can always reach out to me. Just DM, just comment even under this post. Yeah, I'm thinking the next couple of episodes will be about banking, like corporate banking accounts, or how to form a simple LLC, or maybe even student visa related things. Yeah, stuff is growing. It's a lot happening. You can hear by my voice. I am, what's the word? Fried. But the show must go on, and I am really content, people. Thank you so much for your support. And they are not a sponsor, but I really do like their products. So if you have time, go on beebrazil.jp. It's a honey company. They just entered the Japanese market. They have amazing honey products. I tried to get them as a sponsor, hopefully. But yeah, go check them out. It's bee like the animal, and then brazil.jp. I don't know what their social media presence is, but I had a post for them on LinkedIn saying, hey, we're supporting the launch of this. And so maybe this podcast episode is even that support too. But yeah, check them out, beebrazil.jp. And yeah, always reach out. Take it easy. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. Not for watching, for listening. And yeah, talk soon. Take it easy, people. Stay healthy. Stay curious. Always be humble. Peace.